All right, so today we are going to learn about descriptive statistics. Okay, so what it is that we need to answer first a question of what is descriptive statistics. When you hear the word descriptive, what is come to mind? Mahiri meron na phone descriptiveness sa ida maka imihanong heta. What do you think when you hear the word descriptive? What does that means? Huh?
Describe with rumor.
Yes, describe with rumor. Describe something, yeah? You're describing something. Por exemplo, sa uso para o describe to ademia, ademia ne feto, ademia ne fuknaro, ademia ne kulit ne coklat, ademia ne yasan. So you're describing something, correct? So that's what descriptive statistics is. You're describing data. So the way descriptive statistic is involving methods for summarizing and organizing data to describe its main features. Okay. So for example, a professor is conducting a math test for a class of 20 students. Okay. For example, professor nini test by matematica. And then in that math test, there are a total of 20 students. Okay, and the test score for those 20 students are as following. Okay, now the professor wants to ask, how well do my student do in the test? Professor akarakatena nene, ni estudantes siya ni performance iha test sila nene o insa, how well do they do? Okay, how well does the students do during this test? Okay, how do you think a professor measures that? Tuiri mini Hanoi, how do you think a professor measures to know the overall performance of the student in the classroom? Anybody? How do you think a professor measures that? Eufrasia, how do you think professor measures the performance of student in the class? Eufrasia here? Celsius, what do you think? How do you think a professor measures the overall performance of students in the class? Celsius here? By test, yeah. By test. What about other? What about you, Jennifer? How do you think a professor measure the performance of student in the class? I mean, the professor already know the test scores of all those, but the overall performance of the class, they know insa. Gitu. The way this professor do it is by what? Taking the average or the rata-rata by the grade or by the average grade. So the way the professor do is in a sum together all the test scores divided by the total number of students, and it says that 85.05. What is this 85.05? Is the average grades for the entire class. Correct? Agora, this tells me that the interpretation is that the average score in the class is about, 84.85, yeah? Not 85.05. I have to edit this out, sorry. Let me have to edit this out. 85.05. Okay? So the average test score is 85.05. So what it means is that everybody's doing well. So the class is the nilai rata-rata husi class lara naman 85, which is pretty good. That's the last. So which means professor ato sukat ni niya be metodo hanuring kari, ita bele conclude kata professor ni metodo hanuring ni dia. No, sila tamba nilai rata-rata husi examen na be ihane 85.05. So that's a pretty good, out of 100, that's a pretty good test score. Okay, so this is describing. Okay, so that's what descriptive is. You're describing a test score, or you're describing a situation. In this case, you're describing you're describing the overall performance of the classroom through tests, right? So that's one way to do it. Or you can also describe in that the median, the average of the 10th and 11th scores is 85. So we interpret that the middle score is 85, meaning that half of the students scored below this and half of scored above. So for example, the median score na maka, so that 85.5, that means that estudiantes tengan nilai both 85.5 or 85.5, or the other half has a grade below 85.5. So that's what the median is. Or for example, if you plot it in like a histogram like this, you can see a pretty good table distribution. Oh, the mean is this one in the middle over here. The median is the like solid line, and then the mode is way up here. Okay, so basically that's what descriptive statistic is. You use things like mean, median, or mode to describe a certain data. Okay? Jadi comprende to, ini definisan ko na ba descriptive statistics. Okay, any questions? All right. Now, this is just an introduction. Yeah, I'm just giving you an overview of what descriptive statistic is. Now we go into a topic where it's to explain the measures of central tendency. Okay, what does a central tendency means? Okay, so for example, you have a number. Okay, so a measure of central tendency is a statistical concept that helps us find the center of a typical value of a data set. Okay, center net ito na saya klaran to itakar katubuka the center of a typical data set. Agora, consider the following numbers A, B, C. A, B, and C. Giovanni, please mute your microphone. For example, you have a data set of A, B, and C. Okay, let's take the data set A. Okay, number 2 and number 5. Okay, my question is, where do you think the middle or the center of these two numbers located? Where do you think the center of these two numbers located? Numero 2 in the center and Elefanus.
0.
No. Between 2 and 5, where is the center?
3.5.
Yes,
3.5.
correct. Somebody says 3.5. How do you know 3.5? So if we just look at without calculating, without looking at the mathematics, don't do math, just looking, we can see that that red line is in the middle between 2 and 5, correct? So that means that was somewhere around 3.5. Well, that's easy to calculate since you only have 2 data points, correct? If you only have 2 data points, it's easy to determine graphically where the middle of that is. Now, what happens if you have more than 2 data points? Okay, so sekarik imia data points de berua date, ita bele hare graphicalmente la precisa calcula matematica, ita bele hare katak linya clarang or the center is there, right? Graphically, if you only have 2 data sets. But what happens if we have 3 data sets? Let's go to data set B. So the mean is the center between 2 and 5 is 3.5, like you said, correct? Now, what happens if, let's go to the second data set. You have a data set number 6, number 3, and number 5. My next question, Favani, where do you think is the center of these 3 data points? Can you determine by just looking at it graphically?
The center of it?
Yeah. You can't, right? But then the way you do it is you plus 6 plus 3 plus 5, and you divide that by 3, and you get the center of 4.67 right about here. Okay, that's one way of doing it, right? So you get the center of that. So far, comprende to? And then what happens if you have more than 3? What happens if you have negative 3, 4, 7, and 8? Where do you think the center of this data set is? Euphrasia. Where do you think the center of this data set is, Euphrasia? Give me a guess. Can you determine? Bele kala ito determina by just looking at it.
Yes.
How? How do you look by just looking at it? Well, you can just take a guess. So another way you can do it is you buy just the sum, you sum everything up. So -3 plus 4 plus 7 plus 8, you divide it by the 4, you get a 4. So central is right about here. Okay, so that's what you mean by central measure of central tendency. But there are several ways to measure the center. So to ini mi comprende na to, sa ito mas central tendency ni comprende kala. Central tendency means just to measure where is the middle between those data. Comprende to? Comprende kala?
Comprende, teacher.
Okay, so that means just to find the middle amongst the data. That's what central tendency means. Okay, but there are more than one way to measure central tendency. You have what you call a mean, a median, mode, and mid-range. Okay, so there are different ways. The way we do it earlier was we use the mean. Okay, let's do an example. For example, you want to know what is the height of 15 students of South Department at JSU. What's the average height? So what is the average height of 15 students? For example, so you take a measurement, you take a height measurement, imisuka estudyante 15 ninyo height, and you came, this is your data. So if you put that in a number line, cada dot nema representa the height of all the 15, right? By just looking at this, ito level determina kata oh niya klarang ne o level siglit kata oh niya klarang ne kira-kira heneda. Sure, you can do that, but it's not very mathematically accurate. So one way you do it, so you have what I said is measure of central tendency. There are multiple ways of finding the center of a data. So one way is you use the mean. What you call, so the mean is you sum up all the individual values. So 152.4 plus 162.7, and then you plus until 150.2, and you divide it by the total number of data, which is 15, and you get about 158.13. That is what you call the mean. Okay, that is the mean. Now, so the sample mean is denoted by the X bar. Okay, X bar nene denoted ni mean sample ne. Tamit na sample ne 15, we denoted that by an X bar. Okay, now we can calculate for a median, but before you want to calculate the median, the first step is you need to organize in ascending order. Agora, ihaneka numero de helete na bane niya la iha organização ihane 152.4 kik dia ba 162. Depois 162 niya fal te kik fali. Então, sebelum matubuka on your medium, o tem que organize talay si kik babot in ascending order. That's what ascending means. So that is how you organize. So bahiri mo organize tira ne. Where is the middle of this data? This is the middle. Let's say of karik total 15 berarti soring ne ihahira 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The middle is this one, and the other side is also 7 data points. So that's the middle. So that's what you call the median. The median is basically the middle in an ascending order data. Okay? The mode is how many of this data set has repetitions. Meaning sekarang ita yatang 152.4 ne iya may datamak yan niya high yan eh. Berarti 152.4 na repeated alida. So agora yan tare value nila hida ma repeated. So we just write no mode. We don't have any mode. Agora mid-range value ne. Ni ita calculate by summing, you get the maximum value, you plus the minimum value, you divided that by 2. So what is our maximum value here? What is our maximum value here? Huh? The maximum values are
170.
162.8.
no. Maximum is
Oh,
170.
170.
170.
What is the minimum value?
150.2.
150.2. So you take that together. So you get your mid range is about 160.1. Okay, so the formula for the mean is this. So the way you calculate is the mean is represented by this small letter x with a bar on top. That denotes a sample mean, okay? So every time you see a small letter x with a bar on top, that is a sample mean. A mean that you take from a sample you collected. Okay, so you set your x1 plus x2 plus x3 that, until x to f. So you just make it short, the summation of xi from 1 to n, how many number of n you have, divided by n. So this is the formula, okay? This is the formula for the sample mean. The median is simple. You just organize in ascending order and look for the middle values. The mode is looking for the repetition. The mid range is this formula, okay? So suffice to say, so there are 4 ways. So now you already know that there are 4 ways to look at the center of a data set. Okay? Comprende esto? Any questions? Preguntas?
No, teacher.
Great.
Teacher, I have question, teacher.
Julio Armandino.
About the mean, teacher.
Yeah, what about it?
Why this number divide by 15, teacher?
15 because you have total sample of 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Comprende?
Thank you, teacher. Understand.
Okay. So that means our n is equals to what? Our n is equals to Imelda. Then n equals to Imelda here. Imelda Alves. Alessandra Silva. What is our n equals to? Huh? Ya me sirve habol naran na la presente daga. Jesuina Aroso. Jesuina Aroso. Cancio. Lopez.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning. Then n is equals to what? Cancio. N is equal to? Anybody? Emma Ruma, what is our n value? N is equal to?
50.
15. Yes.
50.
Is it very hard to understand that? Susah dulu satu respon dia nega. Comprende kale?
Comprende, teacher.
Okay,
Got
comprende.
it.
Any questions? No. Okay, so that's what
No,
you
have
call,
some.
that's a measure of central tendency. Let's do some more examples. So if you want to plot this, let's say if you want to plot this, agora oing how diana saida onia be mean, median, mode, and mid range rene representa to clarang los galay. Mabe bangira imi hakerek tie data nene niya be niya sira lahane samfil fali los galay. Ya nene onia mean ne makaida miang nene ya nene ya clarang ne onia median ne ma falti ha soring ituan tia on your mid-range ne, may falte ya, ninilito may te falya ne. Tama sana maturi minya hanon diferente. Because the way we find the center is different. Betul? Agora, average height or the mean ini toma conta hoto ba every individual data set. Bahira imi calculate imi mean nene. Cada data iha niya be cada be data point se data set nene niya involve hoto ya calculação. Mas be iha median ne not all the data set involved in the calculation. Ida clarang los mesak ne mak involve. Agora niya range fali ne imi included maka ni minimum o maximum date. Resto ne imi la incluira. Tamino ne ma niya resultado ne lahania sangida. Okay? Nebe, por ejemplo, nessa ne. For example, por exemplo, imi be saida serviço iha companhia be JRC da. Por exemplo, imi fan sapato. Okay? For example, you work at a JRC shoe company. For example, and then, por exemplo, companhia niya naim maka, por exemplo, Ildefanos. Niya loke companhia, niya loke loja ida to fan sapato, loja lai. Agora watu husu fali, então se olo que loja atu fan sapato, então o insama ko hatu hatene sapato ukuran saida mak atu fan ihon yang loja lara. Saya mantene. O insama ko atu determina kata, por exemplo, o sosa outro sapato ide nomor 10 mak barak liu tia, e depois eman nebe nomor 10 be hela atu basosa ne ladung barak, neka rugi lo salah. O sosa fal sapato nomor 7 mak barak liu tia, depois eman basosa nomor 7 ni tuan det nemos ladung dia kira. So how do you guys think if you are a shoe company or a shoe store, how do you determine the stock? If se okara o sosa onia be inventory, o sosa onia stock atau may fangyo na loza. O isamo atu determina kata sapato nomor 7 ni sosa sekian, 8 na sosa sekian, 9 sosa sekian, 10 sosa sekian. Intanto ita bela calcula ita niya be rata-rata ne. Kusi population na bit hela basic ne, loza. So the way you do that is you collect 14 customers, yeah? You select randomly 14 customers. E depois imisukat sila niya be shoe size. Loza. Anto siya data ne maleta na ba ne? For example, customer ida niya shoe size is number 7. Customer ida fali niya shoe size is 8. Ida fali 9, ida fali 8, and so on and so forth. Okay? So the way you calculate is, so niya mean shoe size ne calculate sa o soma hamutok 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 8 until you plus 9. So onia be mean shoe size ne mane 8.29. No, sige like watene kata koni nilai rata-rata onia be median shoe size is about 8. So husi dado sila ne anta obel diang kata anta how thank you sa sapato ne nini ukuran 8 mak barak liu. Tambah rata-rata husi ema hanya customer sila be may sosa ne ninya mayoria ne sapato ukuran 8. Ne mean ne dalang ida untuk bukan ninya klarang ne hanya sane. Agora ato kalkula on your median lo selai on your median ohine kan ihane ita iha 15. Ihane kan 15 lo segala 15 be o bukan ninya klarang ne langsung hetang kerang. Lo selai langsung ida be ninya klarang na bane dari soring ne 7 soring 7. Maybe o insa kari kone data set ne 14 je. Berarti kan ihane ninya klarang ne marua neona. Soring ne iha neng, soring nemos iha nen. Berarti valor klarang ne marua ne. Masalah 8 rua deh klarang ne. Maybe sebelum waktu kalkula on your median, you need to arrange them in ascending order. 7, 8, 9, 10. Masalah? Agora, ida nema que me determina kata número klarang ida numero nebe klarang liu maka ada 8 rua deh klarang. Nebe misoma hamuto divided by 2 you get an 8. That's a median. Okay, so the mid-range value ito bukan yung maximum value which is 10 and our minimum value which is 7. You divide it by 2 you get 8.5. Agora ninya mode ne mano, ninya mode ne Numero ida nebe mak ni repete makasliu. Por ejemplo, ore ene lapang na repete dalihira. Ida, rua, tolu, hat, lima, neng, hitu. Masalah? 9 na repete dalihira. Ida, rua, tolu, hat. 10 na repete dalihira date. 7 na repete dalarua. Berarti entre numero ni dalapang ni repete barakliu. Kata greatest ni frekuensi ni barakliu. Berarti ito niya mode na maka 8 or dalapang. Comprende to? Comprende?
Comprende, teacher.
Maybe imi plot ina nemos imi hari hanesang. Imi niya median, imi niya mean, mid range nila ladong iha agreement ini dia ka. Imi tata niya mode to median ni ko aja hanesan dit kan. Okay? Maybe agora imi considera fal data setter ne. Imi considera fal ito data 2 3 3 5 5 7 7 8 8 ho 9. Okay? Agora imi hari hanene niya kalkulasan o median nene. Agora ihane kan ni repete nene. Agora imi mi aten kalkula na mid range imi agora fator topik importante agora imi aten ihane 3 nemos repete dalarua. 3 is twice repetition. 5 also repeat twice. 7 and 8 ni dalarua keras. Anto sira ni hanesan ho to keras. So selai. Berarti tene mode ne masada. Mode is 3, 5, 7 and 8. Tambah ida nene makabe barakli ita boleh ne multimodal. Kata ida ohine one mode. Sekali rua makanesa ini boleh bimodal. Okay. Por ejemplo, ida ne fali. Comprende to? Bahira niya repete ne makdala barak ini boleh multimodal. Bimodal or multimodal. Okay. So ida de timi tahu mode ne sama dengan 8 na sunai. Nebe mode ne bere 3, 5, 7, 8 tambah saja tambah 3 nemos repete dalarua. 5 is also repeats twice. 7 also repeats twice. And 8 also repeats twice. All of them have the same number of frequency. That's why we have 4 mode here. That's why we call it a multimodal data. Comprende to? Any questions?
Comprende, teacher.
Comprende, teacher.
Okay, so that's what we
Yes,
call
sir.
a modal. Okay? Agora. Considera fali to ko data idane. Data idane sara. Sa imi hare data be 110 idane maka niya mode ne maka repete 110 ma repete dalarua. Berarti ito niya mode is
110.
110. Simple as that. Okay? Nebe ita fo sumario ba measure central tendency karik mane. Ato kalkula ito niya mean or x bar is just simply this formula where n represents the total number of values in the sample. And the median nene, the median ato kalkula ninyo binasekari kim niya n odd ne diyan kata kiren. Numero siya nebe 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 or 15, 17, that's odd. If you have an odd, they mean median may the data the paling klarang yun in an ordered data set. The middle value in an ordered data set. When you have an even data set, when n is even, for example, 16 or 14 or 18, sum of the two middle value in ordered data set divided by 2. Okay, that's how you find the median. Okay, and then mid-range, like you said earlier, is simply the maximum value plus the minimum value divided that by 2. Okay, that's a mid-range. Agora. Okay. Sorry. I need to edit this. But lecture now, should I edit the dia kita nebe? Sometimes this is like, I need to. So mode is the most occurring data set. Okay, so mode is most occurring value in the data. Second, if there are two values that have similar frequency of occurrence, it is called bimodal. If more than 2, it is called multimodal. Comprende to?
Yes, teacher.
Okay. So right now, if you look at the distribution of shapes, pag ini hari distribution na sekali imi tautia tabel imi plot ti imi buka imi central tendency ni imi buka ti imi ni mean median mode sekali imi ni mean median mode na makanesang ho quedas. Okay, sekali imi ni mean median mode na mahamut hanesang ho quedas iten distribution ito bolo naran symmetric. Kari kimni mean, imni median, o imni mode ne hanesang hoto. Ne symmetric. Or sila ya kapitulo ida mebe focus ko na ba ida nedit. Symmetric data point ne. Se kari kimni abe mode ne mapali ihaliu karuk liu ida pois imi hari imni abe distribution ne aga ituang ana sa ne falit ni positively skewed or right skew kata linya clara na mayorita susia nene mono ihane ida pois ni skew to the right. Sekali iminya data ne makalay falit ang sane fila falit tung fila falit ane that means a negatively skewed or left skewed. Okay, that's just a simple distribution of data set. Preguntas? Any question?
No, teacher.
All right, so earlier we already discussed about the measure of central tendency, right? So this is our summary. And we also learn about the way of measuring the distribution or shapes of our data set, okay, or data values. And you know that these three shapes that there is three distribution shape. You have a symmetric, or you have a right skewed, and you have a left skewed. Now there is also there is one more way of calculating the center of a data set, okay? So far you already learned 4 ways of calculating the central tendency. What are the 4 ways? Dalang hatnya sera-sera? The mean. What else? What else?
Median.
The median. What else?
Mid-range model.
The mode
Mode.
and the mid-range, right? That's 4 way you already know. Now the next way you can know is what you call a weighted mean. Okay, so what is a weighted mean? So basically a weighted mean is the average where each value in the data set has a specific weight reflecting its importance or frequency. Right now I'm just giving a definitions. I'll give you an example in a bit to explain what it means, okay? So when data values are assigned different weights, we can compute a weighted mean. So the formula for weighted mean is like this. Okay, I know it's a bit complicated, but it's very easy. Okay, I'm just going to give you an example. For example, you are a taxi driver. For example, you are a taxi driver and you want to know how much is the average cost of gasoline in Delhi. So usually this taxi driver, you are filling up in 3 different gas stations. For example, you're filling up in Timor Gap gas stations, which let's call that an A. And you're filling up in this one in, where is that? Is that in Pulilarang, I think. Yeah. Gas station B, for example. And this is, let's say, gas station C. Okay, and every gas station had different price per liters of gasoline. So basically, you want to calculate the average price of gasoline across 3 gasoline stations that you frequently visit. But the twist is that you don't visit them equally often. Okay, sometimes you fill up more at one station than at others because of location or because of convenience, right? For example, when you go to gas station A, where the gasoline price is $1.10 per liter, so you fill up about 50 liters of gasoline per month in gas station A. Okay, now for gas station B, which the price of the gasoline is about $1.25 per liter, you only fill up about 20 liters per month. Okay, and then at gas station C, where the gasoline price is $1.15, you fill out about 30 liters per month. Okay, now my question is, how do you guys think we should calculate the average price of gasoline in this scenario? Is this correct? A simple average calculate the price as this. Is this the correct way of calculating the average price of a gasoline? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Why? Explain. Why? Because you
Just
sum up,
following the formula.
yeah, you're following the formula. You have three different prices, right? Does everybody agree with Ildefanos that this is the correct way? Any other ideas? Ihe maselog na be la seita ho saida mo Ildefanos kolya diyang. This is not the correct way. Well, it might be correct, but you forget one thing. Over here about gas station A, you fill up different amounts of gasoline. Remember? Oba, yeah, kada fulang ida nene, oba gas station A nene, you fill up 50 liters. But gas station B is only 20 liters, and gas station C is 30 liters. When you do a calculation based on a calculation of average price, just based on these liters, you don't take into account the weight of each gas station. Maksudnya, tambah ida farina o ense 50 liter, ida farina o ense 20 liter det, ida farina o ense 30 liter. Jadi ida ninia be quantidade ne be oba ense cada gasolina ne o la toma conta e one calculação, which is not a very accurate calculation of a average gasoline price. That is why we have to use a what we call a weighted mean. So the way you calculate a weighted mean is you simply take 50 gallons multiplied by $1.10, right? 50 liters, sorry. And then plus 20 liters on station B for a price of $1.25 and 30 liters for a price of $1.15. And then you divide the total weight, which is 50 liters plus 20 liters plus 30 liters. And that gives you about $1.145. I know the difference is not a lot, but this is more accurate calculations of the average gasoline price based on this one taxi driver's estimate. Okay, so the weighted mean price is $1.145 per liter. Now, my question is, why is it different? Tama sa'yo naman, ruwan na diferente. Tama sa'yo naman, valor 1.17 and 1.145 is different. Agora, iha 1.17 nene, you are treating all stations equally. That's like, imi hetan $1.17 na bane, imi asumi kata estação mina tolo ne imi asumi hanesa ngo keras. Kata que imi ba ense nene 50 liter to keras. Or imi ladun sibuk ni, por exemplo, ba estação ida ne imi ladun sukat, imi ba sukat sadam, imi ladun sibuk ida, imi ense mina litro hira, imi focus litro pa ni price date. But you forget the liters that you go because each gasoline that you go contributes differently. Maksudnya, se o ba ense gasolina barak liu ya fating ida berarti ida nemo se afeta hotubo onia total average. Makes sense, ya? Comprende to? Does that make sense?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay. So let's do another example. Okay. For example, Maria, for example, Maria took 5 courses in her first semester. Okay. And her grades were this. For example, Maria takes statistics, pre-calculus, RM1, TLG1, and EAP, for example. Okay. For example, iha materia nene, iha JS unit ini credit 4 satu keras, yeah. So, but this is not exactly. For example, yeah, statistics has 4 credits, pre-calculus has only 3 credits, research methodology has 4 credits, TLG only have 2 credits, and EAP only has 3 credits, for example. And then Maria nilai naman 75% or 67. Oh, idan na troka salat ya. Let me just edit. I have to edit this. For example, this is 95. This is 93. B is 85. C is, let's say, 68. And then B is 70, let's say 78, for example. Okay. Okay, for example, ini grades ne mana? 95, 92 ne ni hetan A. Yan ini sistema ni A, B, C, D of it. Lah you have A plus, B plus, C plus lah ya. This example, I'm only make it simple so you understand. Okay, ini nilai ne mana? Statistics ni hetang A. Pre-calculus mo ni hetang A. RM1 ni hetang B. TLG ni hetang C. E depois EAP ni hetang B. Imi atene kali imi GPA ni babaeng kalkulo insa. Siya atene kalkulasan GPA ni insa. Does anybody know? Imi rumah atene kali.
Divided by credit.
Divided by what, Antonio? Divided by what? Okay, so my question is, what is Maria's average grade in the semester? Okay, for example, imi 40 niya be. Sada? Oh. So for example, imi 40 niya be 95 plus 92 plus. This is why I have to go into detail when I prepare this lecture notes, yeah. 68 plus 78 divided by 5. What you get? What's Maria's average grade? $83 point. Okay, now my question is this the right way of calculating Maria's average grade in the semester? Not really, Las Gale. Tama Saida may not the right way. Anybody knows? Tama Saida.
They didn't consider the credits. They didn't
Yes,
take
very
consideration.
good. We didn't consider the credits. Agora, ihan ene statistic na ya credit hat. Pre-calculus na ya tolo date. TLG na ya credit through a date. Ito la considera niya credits. That's why we have to use the weighted mean. Por exemplo, universidade ni sistema na mane. Katak bahira o hetan A, o ni grade points na 4. O hetan B ni, o hetan 3, C ni, o hetan 2, o hetan D ni 1 grade. Berarti universidade ni, jesimos iyan ini rasik ya.
Sekarang jaring yang atlas.
I know because I
Dilarang jaring.
developed this. Who's talking? Diana kah? Takut to the microphone. I know because I developed this system, okay? So, for example, ito na university system ni, hetang A ni grade points is 4. So that will be the weighted. So you have to, that's how you calculate your GPA. So only be grade ni A kala. O hetang A nema 4 nene, 4 ito nene iha metang ne. O kali ba iha 4 miyang ida nene, 4 nene grade point ne. Oops, I'm wrong now. Lo dala, agora tuirfina fali mai. I think I make this wrong calculation over here. Yeah, see, I edit everything up to this point. So this has to be 4. And this has to be B is what? How many credits is that? So 4. B is 4 credits. But this A is only have 3 credits only. And then that is 2 credits times C is 2 credits, and that's 3 credits times B is 3 credits. Okay, so what you get? So 4 times 4 plus 3 times 4 plus 4 times 3 plus 2 times 2 plus 3 times 3 divided that by 4 plus 3 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3. So that's about 3.31. And that's about 3.312. Okay, so this is the GPA that you calculate, right? So you get 4 over here is from the credit. You have 4 credits and you get a grade of A, which equivalent to 4 points. That's why you get this red 4 here. The next one is you have 3 credits, which is for pre-calculus, is 3 credits only. You multiply by 4 because you got an A. So A is equivalent to 4. The next one is you have 4 credits, but you only get a B, which is equivalent to 3 grade points. And the next one is you only have 2 credits, and you multiply by 2 because you have a C. And then the next one is you have 3 credits, you get a B, therefore you get a 3. So you you divided that by the total credits, 4 plus 3 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3. You sum them up and your GPA is about 3.3125. Comprende to?
Yes,
Understand?
Yes, teacher.
So now
Yes,
you know
sir.
how to, now if you get your grade, you can calculate your own GPA. All right, so how many ways can you calculate the measure of central tendency? You can use the mean. What else? The mode, the median, the mid-range. And if the data set has the weight, then you need to use weighted mean, average. Okay? Any questions? Preguntas?
No, teacher.
Nice. Okay. Now let's go talk about the new topic. Okay. Now let's talk about what you call a measures of variation. Now, imagine these 2 data sets. You have data A and data B. Okay. Now, when you calculate the mean for these 2 data, the first data has a mean of 5.44, and the second also have the same mean. So naroon na data nila, but they have the same mean. Okay. And then how do you differentiate between data A and data B? Okay, so let's look at this data A. So this is the data. Okay, so the mean is the red value that is in the middle over here. That's the mean, okay? And this is the data B. Okay? Okay, so basically what you want to know is what is the distance of each data point to the mean. For example, what is the distance of 3 to the mean, which is this arrow over here that I represent? Or what is the distance between 4 to the mean? Or like this distance from this mean. Okay, that's the distance. That's what you call a variation. How far or how vary is your data set to the mean? That's why you call variation. Same with data set number 2. For example, this one to this one, this one to this one, this one to this one. Okay, so variance measures the spread of the data in the sample, meaning spread ne comprende fun spread to, correct niya naklok saiga, niya be distribution ne. Agora uso entre data set ruane, which data A or B has more variance from the mean. Are you seeing it? Which data set has more variance, A or B?
A, teacher. Is it A?
A, Los Galesensio.
Yes, I
How do you
think
know?
it is A.
How do you know?
Because of the errors teachers put in the from the means to the 5.4 to 4 to 8.
Yeah, so because
It is
the
more
spread that the data set in A is have more spread than the data set in B, right?
yes.
Okay. Comprende kali? Bisa lo comprende kali?
Comprende, teacher?
Okay, tambah bahira ini hari distancia entre every data, distancia entre cada data point ini distancia husin ini ming de clarang na bane. Kita compara data A com data B nene, ninia be distribuição ga ninia distancia dok malu barak liu ne mak data ida A ne. Data B ne iha mes ladung luang ladung barak ida. Ida be leta ne barak liu. Então, so we define variance to measure the spread of the data in the sample. Okay, so basically, so what it means to say, so which data has more variance from the mean? So we can say that by just looking at the figure, yeah, without doing any calculation, without doing any math. So that's your data A. Okay, I want to show you another example that I think might be a useful distribution that I think might be a more useful okay. Agora os falei, dali datang. Entre data set, agora oh ini hira. This one you only have a couple of data, right? You only have how many data is this? I mean, you only have 1, 4, 6, 8, 9 data. So it's easy to determine. What if you have a lot more data? Imagine like this. Okay, which one has more dispersed or more variation? Has more variation? Data set A or 1 or 2?
That's it.
Huh?
2,
That's
1.
That's it.
Data set 1 or 2?
It's
One.
two.
Sesema dihan 1. Okay, sesema dihan 1. Sesema dihan 2.
Means, yeah.
Elefanus,
One.
which one is more spread? 1 or 2?
1.
Sema mo hindi ang 1. Sema mo hindi ang 1 ne.
Armandino, teacher. 1.
Explain,
Okay.
Armandino, why do you think dataset 1 has more variation than dataset 2? Explain.
Because the data 1 ini so butuh kamu tu dia, teacher.
Yeah, but butuh hamutuk. Atau ako explica variation is sayda. What is variation? Variation is what? Anybody? What is variation again?
Distance.
Yeah, the distance or what's the definition? The spreadness of the data. Spread of the data in the sample, that's the line?
Yes.
Okay, now I ask again. Which of the data set 1 and 2 is more spread or more dispersed?
That's it. So
Data set 2, right? Because
Yes.
if you look at every single data point, the dispersion is the distance between each individual data is more spread out comparing to the data set 1. So data set 2 is more dispersed. Comprende todos ahí my variance? Understand what the variance is?
Yes.
Like from
Yes,
a visual, imagine kali. Jadi, imiron na font variance iminya Morris Loro, now you can visualize it in terms of numbers. Okay. Now let's come up with a formula. Okay. O hindi tim hare visual de, lazale. O hindi hare visual de in terms of data ni imi visualize it, but we don't have any formula to calculate. But let's develop a formula. For example, let's consider data A, okay? This is your data A. Okay, so data A, your mean is 5.44. So how do you think, so every distance from the mean. So for example, distansya entre 3, 5 na makuhetan 3 minus 5.44. That's how you get negative 2, right? That's how you get negative 2.44. 4 minus 5.44. That's how you get, yeah, these values over here. Okay? So when you do that, is that imnya data sida nene may husi da ne. Lasalay? Agora, imi harea fila fali, nebe cada data sida nene, ini kan imnya data set nema 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8. Lasalay? Husi ohing ne. Imnya data set I da ohing ne. Let me just go back and copy the data set A here, just so we can have a reference. Okay, so data set A, you see here 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 3, 6, 7, 5. Nebe, yan hamutuk siya kala nebe ore ne ida rua tolu hat lima neng hitu walu siya. Nebe minival distansya na imi buka distance between 2 points is you just simply minus them, right? This is negative because 3 minus that tararada. To hene comprende kala? Ida parenthesis la rin comprende kala? We're
Yes, teacher.
okay. So you know that 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 7, 7, and 8. Let's call that an x. Just an x. We minus by x bar, which is our mean. Is this a correct way of representing it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Correct? You have your x data minus the mean. Okay? So you but then you sum them up. O soma hamutuk tiya. Tamer na makita iha this summation value over here. You sum them up of x minus x bar, meaning you tamba. Tamer na makita yung symbol, this summation symbol over here. Okay? But then, in order to calculate the average average spreadness, yeah, average spreadness, and then we just take the sum and you divide it by n. What is n? The total number of data points, correct?
And it's 9.
So, hene comprende kala? N is 9 in this case, yes. So, hene comprende, do you guys agree with this formula that we came up with?
Tidak comprende, teacher.
Sisa comprende, hene be? Jose, sila comprende, hene be? Laro na mos newsa. One jaringan la dunia kira. Remilde. ¿E preguntas? Todo ne comprende kale. Up to this point only.
Yes, it.
Okay. So now, why do I divide x minus x bar divide to n? Tama saya. How ni objektibo ni at heta numero ida nebe describe the average, the overall spreadness, yeah. Tamira na maka how soma hamutuk tia, how divided by n. That's my objective. I want to represent the spreadness by a single value, right? That's why the way I do it, I take the distance of each individual data points from the mean, I sum them up, I'll soma hamutuk tia, how divided by the total number of data points, that will give me a value. But then there is a problem. Problema na yan ba? Do we really care if it's negative or positive?
No, because
No, we don't really care if it's negative or positive, correct? Why? Because you want to know the distance. In this case, we only want to know how far is our data points from the mean. we don't, in this case, negative and positive just represents to the left or to the right of the mean. Okay, so if you want to express this in a mathematical formula, how do you make sure that the formula that you came up with always result in a positive value? You take a square. Okay, so when you take a square of this, even if whatever is in the parentheses is negative, you take a square, it will always give you a positive. It will just give you a number. Even if it's negative, square, you get a number. Even if it's positive, square, you still get a number. Toh ini comprende? Tambah saya atau square ini tambah. We don't care about whether or not it's a negative 1.44. We just care about the magnitude, meaning it's the absolute value or the distance between the data points to the mean. That's why I have a square. But then I divided that to n. That's my formula for variance. So technically, this is my formula for variance. Now you see there is a difference. Now you see there is, instead of just n, there is an n minus 1. There is a reason why there is an n minus 1, which is in the next slide. We will discuss what is an n minus 1, but n minus 1 is simply what you call a Bezel's correction or degrees of freedom. Okay? Degrees of freedom is the way of making it the calculation more accurate. Okay, so this is our variance. Sample variance is represented by S squared. I'm gonna put it so you understand it is. So S squared is a sample variance, okay? Is sample variance. I'm gonna have to make this smaller. Okay, so S squared is sample variance. We will also have population variance and then population mean, population mode later. But right now, we're just talking about statistics. Later on, we'll make a summary and compare between the sample and population. But right now, since we are studying only samples, we call it a sample variance. Now, comprende kali? Toh ini comprende kali? Perguntas rumah about this formula that we came up with this formula. Anybody have any questions about this formula? I know.
Sí.
Yes.
La fórmula ne masih daw comprende siya.
Ito ano ba? Wala comprende sa ida. Variable ano ba? X ga, X bar ga, N ga, S square ga sa ida. Which one? Z.
Sir, ne fórmula primero bato sorry ne ba may to es square ne masih daw comprende siya.
Anto sebelum niyo comprende kali?
Sebelum ne comprende siya.
Anto X minus X bar ne may sino ba? Ito na. Ganun na may sino ba? Ha?
Dari nga atli sida sir.
Ha?
Dari nga atli rado.
Okay, so I ask anybody for the class generally. How do you guys, why do I write X minus X bar over here? What is this?
X is the number 4, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 5, and minus X is the
mean.
5.44. The mean 5.44.
What is the objective of doing this? X minus X bar. What is the objective? To find what?
To find the distance.
Yes.
For the
Distance.
Find the distance between each data point to the mean. Okay. So you guys take pre-calculus, right? So distance between 2 points is just simply minus them. Okay. For example, what is the distance between 1 and 3? If you have 3 minus 1, that's 2. Or it can be negative 2. 1 minus 3. It's the same thing. Right? Comprende, though? So that's why you have X minus X bar. But then you want to sum every data points. That's why you have this summation function over here, the sum of here. And then you divide it by n. Why? Because you want to get a one single point, so you divide every distance. So you divide every distance between data points to the mean, every distance, you sum every distance, you divide it by the total number, so that's what you get here. But then you put a square. What is the reason of putting a square over there again? Tambah?
Because when it comes to negative number, by times it by 2 will become positive.
Yeah, because we don't care about negative or positive. We only care about the distance itself, so we put a square in it to avoid this confusion. Because why? Because -4 plus 4 is equals to 0. But then 4 plus 4 is equals to 8. Tahu salah? Antar buat dua ni lah hanya sangat na. Mana be ihit ni objektif ni buat -4 o 4 ni hanya sandai. Tahu salah? Também não é tahu square ni. Saya ita tahu square. Resultado ni be ita calcular ni saya akan salah tambah. If you the difference, when you calculate the distance, give you a negative value, and then when you sum them up, the resultado saya beda. Tahu salah? For example, -1 plus 2 is equals to 1. Tahu salah? Maybe in context to it, -1 or 1 is the same. It's just distance, the magnitude only. You don't care about the. In this case, negative only indicate the directions to the left of the mean. So that's why you have a square to avoid this the effects of the negative values when you do the summation. That's why you have a square. And then the formula for variance is you need to divide. Technically, it's n, but the mathematician added n minus 1 to make it more accurate. Yeah, more accurate because of what you call a degree of freedom. Next slide, I will explain what is the degree of freedom. Okay, next slide, I will explain why it's n minus 1 and not just n. The mathematician called Bessel come up with it. So, okay, so what is degrees of freedom? Okay, what is degrees of freedom or Bessel's function? Or Bessel's correction. So let's imagine this. Let's take example of this 5 number. Yeah, you have 5 numbers: 2, 3, 5, 6, and 4. Okay, so up to this point, you understand how to calculate the mean, right? So the mean, the way you calculate the mean is you take every number, you sum them up, and you divide it by the total number of data set, which is you get a 20 over here. Right, divided by 5, and you get a mean of 4. Now you understand. Up to this point, you understand, yeah? Now I want to explain what is the degrees of freedom. Now, we know the mean is 4. Loh sekali, penghira kita to calculate ni variance ni to uja mean, loh sekali. And we know that. We know that our mean is 4, and we need this mean to calculate for the variance. But then there is another twist. Ato hetan mean of 4 ni laos kombinasaw entre 2, 3, 5, 6, 4 makhetan mean of 4 lo sila. Data set seluk mos bel hetan mean of 4. For example, 7, 2, 1, 5, 5 mos bel hetan mean of 4. Correct? So both of them have the same mean. They have a different variance, but they have the same mean. So if you calculate the means, so the way you calculate is that 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6. That's right? Oni objektivo ni ato hetan the mean of 4. Berarti se hatene onan valor hat ida pertama ne ida ikus lini automaticamente hatene onalo salah. Tambo oni golem ato hetan 20. Right? So you have 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6. So that's a total of what? 16. So the last number must be 4.
4.
It cannot be any other number, right? If it's any other number, and the mean will no longer be 4. So technically, only 4 number have a freedom to change to any values. Okay, so if I say this number, I have a 7 and a 2, a 1 and a 5. It can be any number, right? But only 4 values has a freedom to vary. Degrees of freedom. The last one you will know it's automatically gonna be 5, not gonna be any other value, right? Let's go.
Yes, teacher.
Plus.
So you only have 4 values that has a freedom to change to any other values. That's what you call a degrees of freedom. That's why mahirap o calculate na name. That is why, so the last number has no freedom to vary. It is fixed by the mean and any other and the other values. That is why we have 4 degrees of freedom in this case for n equals to 5, where n minus 1 is equals to 4. Tambah na naman ito ni formula uhing na. Instead of using n, we use n minus 1 to take into account the degrees of freedom. Okay? Comprende ito? Any
Comprende
questions?
siya.
Preguntas?
Lahat.
I don't really.
All right. All right. So now that you understand variance, right now let's go to standard deviation. Okay.
Teacher, excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
I don't really how to comprehend you ida power in n minus 1.
Okay.
See.
Hold on. Let me go back. Okay, go ahead. Who's ba? Tells you.
How to comprehend ko na ba n minus 1.
You mean why it's n minus 1? Or
Yes.
n minus 1 is the degree of freedom, meaning answer for example, okay? All right. Let's take these 5 numbers, okay? You have 5 numbers, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 4. And then on your objective is to calculate the variance for these 5 numbers. Okay? And our steps to calculate for, you need a mean to calculate for the variance. Yes or no? Yes or no? Basta? Ito
Yes,
procedure ito niya mean
Yes.
to calculate niya variance. Base ba formula ni yung tahalo ni. Agora, but then the mean, it becomes a problem where any other 4 numbers can also get a mean of 4. Laos kombinasyon, these 5 numbers only will give me a mean of 4. Mean of 4 na niya will combine entre any 5 numbers. Correct? Which is also like 7, 2, 1, 5, 5 also has a mean of 4. Okay, so antaw ako usufali, antaw entre data 5 nene, yung data point hira maka obele muda main nene, or you can always change to a different values. As long as you get a 20 at the end. Okay, for example, how many 2 na obele troca fali ba iha 6, 3 na obele troca fali ba 4, 5 na obele troca fali. It has to be any order, yeah, it's any order. As long as ninya sam nene hetan 20, that's valid. The mean 4 is valid. But in order to get a 20, setelah hetan tia setelah muda tia nomor hati da tutir malu nene, ida ikus liune la ya freedom atu muda ona. Otomatis hatene ona ida ikus ne. Tama on your objective maka to hetan mean is equals to 4, right? That's your objective. In order to get a mean of 4 and your n is equals to 5, the numerator must be 20. So if I have 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 6 is 16. So automatically, it equals that. Thank you.
4.
Thank you 4. It cannot be any other value. Say na equals na makanya 5. Jadi what it means to say is that numero data points hat primero ne has a freedom to change to any value, but the last one cannot. So you have to minus 1. For example, sekarang yeah 50 data points, only 49 has a freedom to change to any other value. The last one cannot. That's why n has to minus 1. The same thing with this one. Okay, the same thing with this one. If you have 100 data values, your degrees of freedom will just be 99 and not 100. Comprende, no?
Okay. Thank you to comprehend. So basically, the number 1 is to represent the last number.
Yeah, the last number
It's
that
not
has
a-
no
it doesn't
freedom
have-
to change. Yes, that's what it means. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's.
Now I understand.
You see, this is a very simple concept, but it takes. Agora ita comprende tena conceito simples yun nessa name. Maybe 100 taong, 200 taong yan lalo. This is a very revolutionary idea. Masema for idea na manang Nobel Prize, win a lot of money just to come up with this simple idea. But it is logically makes sense, like mathematically correct.
I understand. Thank you,
Okay.
teacher.
So this is why you have a the formula. So our formula for sample variance is this one, yeah. Wait, what is not my formula again? Okay, so this is your formula for sample variance. Okay. Okay, now that you understand variance, now let's talk about standard deviation. And now a standard deviation is the same thing like a variance. Remember, yeah, when you have an x minus an x bar, you take a square. Why do you take a square again? Repeat, remind me. Why did we take a square again? To avoid the negative distances between data points, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, teacher.
Yes, right?
Yes, teacher.
But then, how ni objektibo na sayda? How ni objektibo o hing initial how be buka formula na sayda? I want to represent the variation into one single number. Okay? But then, tamba o hing how tautia na iya how ni square iya how ni população, how bele ba falin ni original? The way I go back to the original is what? I take the square root of it. Same formula. I'm just taking the square root so that I can remove this 2 over here to go back to my original description. So this is what you call standard deviation. So variance and standard deviation is this one. So S is your standard deviation. So S squared represents your sample variance. The S represents your sample standard deviation. Okay, so this is your sample variance and your sample standard deviation. I know this is a very, so your conclusion is, our summary is what? How do you calculate for sample variance and sample standard deviation? So you know the sample variance and you know the,
Sample standard deviation.
sample standard deviation. But just like let's about 5 ways to calculate the variation, right? We have about 5 ways of calculating a variation. We also have two. So right now, we also have another way, what you call a range or R. So now you already know the variance formula, and you know the standard deviation formula, and then the range. The range is very simple formula. All you need to do is take the highest values minus the lowest value, and that's what your range is. So we can get a summary. We can get we can make a summary of measure of variation. Yeah, summary for measure of variation. So the summary for measures of variation. I want to make a summary of this. So you already understand the measures of variation, measure of central tendency. And now you understand the measure of so this is your sample variance. Okay, so this is your sample variance. This is your sample standard deviation. And then your range is a simple X, where R is of the range, yeah. And then R is used for range. Okay? Okay, so that is your summary. Oh, yeah. I don't want to have this. All right, so that's your measures of variation. You have a sample variance and you have a sample standard deviation, and then you have a formula for range. Earlier, you have also a formula for, where is it? This is the formula for, okay, so just to make a summary of today's class. Okay, so this is the summary formula for the measure of central tendency, and this is the summary for the measures of variation. Okay, next meeting, we will be solving a bunch of problems to use these formulas to calculate some problems. But today, I want you to understand the concept behind these formulas. Any questions so far? Perguntas, Roma?
No, teacher.
All right, awesome, great.